What's up, guys? This is my first ever YouTube video. I'm a big UFC MMA fan. I've been watching for a couple years, and I decided to make a channel, start dropping my predictions every now and then. Sometimes I'll drop a little banger every now and then, but let's see if I can keep it up. This is my first video, and I wanted to do UFC 327 predictions because I'm really excited about that card. It's a pretty nice card, but I realized there was 4 fight nights until then. So I decided that instead of doing the 327 now, we're just going to predict the main event for the next 4 fight nights. This is Josh Emmett versus Ken Vallejos, Evloev versus Lerone Murphy, Israel Adesanya versus Joe Pyfer, and then Moicano versus Duncan. These are some badass fight kits. How could you not be excited for Moicano versus Duncan at the Apex? You know what I'm saying? But yeah, we're going to go in order from, in the order that they're scheduled, starting off with Josh Emmett versus Kevin Vallejos. Okay, so Josh Emmett versus Kevin Vallejos. Now, from what I've been seeing online, on TikTok, on Instagram, I'm pretty tapped in. But what I've been seeing online, it seems that the consensus is that Vallejos is going to come out here and slime old man Josh Emmett. And I have to agree, to be honest. I think that at this point, Emmett is slow, plotty, throws one punch at a time, and most of the time it's just that overhand right. He's kind of just hoping it lands. He's 1-4 in his last 5. Subbed by Yair, dominated by Topuria, 49-46 by Lerone Murphy, and then subbed in like a minute by Salau. His only win in that time period is bombing an overhand right against Bryce Mitchell, which at this point is his pretty much his game plan. Go out there, see if you can land the big right hand, and if you can't land it, well, that's all she wrote, And, I think it is, stuff like the KO over Bryce Mitchell that will make people want to pick Emmett because, oh, man, Emmett only needs one. Emmett put anybody's lights out, which is true. But I think he's thoroughly outclassed here. I think Vallejos has pretty much every advantage. Younger, faster, better defensively. His counters are much sharper. And he has knockout power of his own. It might not be to the extent of Emmett, but he can definitely put anybody's lights out if he lands clean. The only part of Vallejos' game, fighting style, should I say, that I'm not a huge fan of is that he can wait a lot. I was rewatching his fight with Giga Chikadze, and that first round, he kind of just waited around, was kind of waiting and seeing if maybe an opening would be there. I'm not a big fan of, I think, a high level guy with some good volume would take advantage of that, but it's not going to be a big issue here. Emmett is a worse version of that because he's older, because he's slower, his reactions are slower, he's less explosive at this point. He has power, but he's less explosive at this point. And he also isn't a big combination guy, a big volume guy. So I don't think that will matter much here, Another thing that I wasn't too fond of from Vallejos is that it seems like he kind of just eats kicks, He has that tight guard, boxing style type guard, and he'll kind of just eat kicks a lot of the time, especially that Chikadze fight, his UFC debut. I can't remember the guy's name, some Asian guy. I don't want to guess because that might be racist, but he kind of just eats kicks a little bit, but I don't think that'll be a big issue here against Josh Emmett. Like I said, he's not really that versatile at this point. And Emmett does shoot takedowns. He's averaging at least a shot per fight, which is something, He shot against Murphy and stuff. Didn't shoot against Salah because he got, subbed pretty quickly, but he will shoot a takedown if he feels like he needs to, but I don't really think he'll have much success in here. Vallejos is a strong guy, nice little clinch. I don't think he'll really be just controlled like that. I also don't think Emmett is that good of a wrestler. He's okay. He'll land a takedown or two, but he's not really anything crazy with the takedowns. I also think that it's just very clear that Emmett has been regressing for a while now. He's every fight gotten a little slower, gotten a little worse, thrown a little less. He's clearly just not the same guy anymore. And the fact that he even bombed that right hand against Mitchell, low-key, it prolonged his career for a while because I mean, like I said, 1-4 in his last 5 without being his only win, bombing a right hand on a short notice Mitchell. It extended his career for a couple fights, but I think it ends here. I think Emmett is the older veteran who's clearly on the downfall, and Vallejos is the rising, exciting prospect. And they're just trying to put some name value. The UFC is just trying to put some name value on Kevin Vallejos' resume. But I think he'll find the timing relatively easily. I think he'll find the counter easily. He's the much faster guy, more explosive. And I think he'll knock out Emmett in a round or two, maybe 3 if, like I said, he respects Emmett's power and kind of waits on that a bit. But I think, I think the ending is a foregone conclusion either way. I think Vallejos is going to go out here. He's going to stop this guy. He's going to make a big call out, we're going to see it on ESPN. Well, not ESPN anymore, but we're going to see it on TikTok. This guy's knocking out Emmett. Wow, It's because Emmett still has that name value solely because he has crazy power. So it'll give him a bit of a boost in terms of, popularity. And obviously it'll put him higher in the rankings. He should be around 11th or 10th in the division if he beats Emmett. And I think he could do a matchup like Vallejos versus Arnold Allen, who's coming out the Silva Laws. Or maybe Zalal, who just beat Josh Emmett. I think that'd be a pretty good, contender, up-and-comer type of fight. I'd say Ortega, poor Ortega. I feel like he'd be the type to get fed to this guy. Like he was fed to Diego Lopez. But I think Ortega wants to move up. I don't really think he'll be at featherweight. And if he is at featherweight, I don't think he'll come back for a while. And, Steve Garcia and Diego Lopez are booked. I think either of those would be exciting fights, but those guys are doing their thing. I don't think they do a Silva rematch just yet because they want to push Silva up into that title picture. I don't think they'll make him fight down. I mean, they gave him Arnold Allen, who was higher ranked, even after Silva had gotten KO'd by Lopez, So it's pretty clear they want Silva up there. And I don't think Yair is going to take a fight down. That guy wants a title shot. He still thinks he deserves a title shot. So I don't think he'll fight a, up-and-coming prospect with KO power like that. So I think, an Allen Zalal is a pretty realistic fight. Maybe on the main card of a number event or an Apex main event or something like that. Or, who knows. But I think that's a reasonable matchup and a reasonable next step for Vallejos. And honestly, I'd pick him against either of those guys. Initial thoughts, I might have to think about it more, but initial thoughts, I'm thinking I'd pick him against either, So there's supposed to be a title eliminator with the winner facing Volkanovski next for the belt, obviously, but who knows at this point, with the new Paramount deal focusing on entertainment over, peer rankings and stuff, these guys might just get snubbed again. I mean, how could you not make Volk versus Lopez 3? You know what I mean? But in all seriousness, the winner of this fight should get the title shot against Volkanovski. And I think the winner will be Evloev. And I'm pretty comfortable saying that, to be honest. Murphy is coming off that crazy spinning elbow KO against Aaron Pico on 319, I want to say. 319. It was on the Hamza versus DDP undercard. But yeah, he put out Pico cold in the first round. It's one of the craziest knockouts I can remember in a while, But I mean, that's a very clear outlier in Lerone Murphy's career. You look back at his fights previous, he had 5 straight decisions, with one of them being a split decision. And to be honest, I'm not too sure how to rank that win over Pico, since Pico hasn't proven himself at all in the UFC. He was winning the first round against Murphy, but got reckless, got put out cold, and Pico's always kind of been a glass cannon, so I'm not too sure where I can rate that win, And apart from that crazy KO, I don't think Murphy has shown anything exceptional, to be honest. He's a guy who's a jack of all trades, but a master of none, you know what I mean? He's a solid striker, solid wrestler, okay power, okay speed, solid cardio and stuff, but he doesn't really have that X factor, So, and guys, you need that X factor, Ilya, crazy power, Volk, crazy IQ, Max, crazy cardio, these guys have, whenever you look at a great fighter, you can look at something in them and be like, damn, well, this guy is really good here, he's really good here. I don't necessarily think Murphy has shown that. I think he's shown he's a guy who is pretty well rounded. He's solid. He's not gonna lose to unranked guy or like a barely top 15 guy or anything like that. I think he's a solid fighter. And I don't want that to be taken as me saying that, oh, Mozart is this guy who's just gonna finish you. Nah, Mozart has 0 finishes in the UFC. He's a complete opposite. But I think you can very clearly look at Mozart and see that that guy has elite wrestling, the best wrestling in the featherweight division right now. And honestly, I mean, probably the best wrestling in featherweight ever. Who would compete? I guess Ilya would compete. I guess Chad Mendes would compete. Just the best wrestler we've seen in featherweight in a while, I mean, he beat Aljo, who's a former champion. That was a very fun not pure, but for the most part, grappling fight. And Aljo is an elite grappler. He 30-27 Diego Lopez, who dangerous striker, KO power. The guy's a 2-time title challenger now, and he's got sneakily good jiu-jitsu, man. Diego Lopez has some nice, solid jiu-jitsu. And yeah, it was on short notice, but the point is, we've seen Mozart beat high-level guys just with how good his wrestling is, Also has a win over Brendan Allen, and, and I just think Murphy is not going to have an answer for this level of wrestling. I think Evloev really is a good... Say what you want to say about the guy. He's boring. He can't finish. He dates 17-year-old. But the guy has elite wrestling. He really does. And I just don't see how I just don't see how Murphy is going to be able to stop that. I mean, I saw this guy get picked up and thrown down by Josh Emmett, So it's just like nothing that he has done has really shown me that he can stop Evloev's wrestling. I mean, he also got taken down by Pico, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think that Evloev is going to finish him or anything. I'm not saying Evloev is going to go out here sub this guy in round 1 or anything, but I think he'll control the fight with his wrestling pretty comfortably, pretty easily. Murphy doesn't have an equalizer, he doesn't have one-punch power, or he doesn't have sneaky good jiu-jitsu, or, there's not really anything that you can say about Murphy that I can beat, because I can say, well, Mozart has elite wrestling, Mozart has elite control, elite takedowns. I don't think there's anything that you can really say that to about Murphy. Not that Murphy's bad, but he's just solid. He doesn't really have an X factor. He's just a solid fighter. Yeah, so I'm going to pick Evloev by pretty dominant decision. I mean, probably 49-46, maybe 50-45. I wouldn't be surprised if he 50-45 to Murphy. And like I said earlier, I think the winner of this fight should fight Volkanovski. I think that's the clear fight to make for the belt at 145. And to be honest, I think Volk would beat both of these guys. I think Volk is so well-rounded, such high fight IQ. I do think he'd beat Mozart. But that's not the point. I think Mozart's going to win this fight pretty comfortably, make it look easy, and there should be no reason why the winner of this shouldn't fight for the title next. This is the biggest fight night in terms of name value out of the 4 that I'm predicting today. Former champ Izzy versus Joe Bodycam off Pyfer. When I first saw this announcement, 2 things came into my head. One, Izzy should win this by decision if he's not completely washed. And 2, the UFC thinks Izzy is done, man. And they want Pyfer to build a name off of him, to be honest. I think it's pretty clear when you're a number 4 ranked former champion and you're fighting the number 14th ranked guy. It's pretty clear that the UFC thinks you're done, and I don't blame them, I think if Izzy loses this fight, then he should just retire, He's an all-time great, second greatest middleweight of all time, in my opinion. And if you're losing to a guy that's barely in the top 15, why even keep going? You've done everything you can. You don't have to prove anything to anybody anymore. We all know who Izzy is and his legacy and his greatness. So I really think if he were to lose his fight, that he should call it. He should call it a career before taking unnecessary damage or anything. With that being said, though, I do believe that Adesanya has some magic left in him. I think he's still a guy that can beat, guys that aren't truly top 5 level in middleweight. So when I saw him booked against Pyfer, it kind of surprised me a little bit. I think Izzy is much more skilled than Pyfer. I think he's the better striker in all levels in every way. I think that's pretty clear. I don't think Pyfer is gonna be able to just hold him down. Izzy has pretty good takedown defense. It's been shown throughout his career. Dricus got to him, but Dricus is also a freak of cardio and muscle and strength. So I don't think Pyfer is Dricus. So if we're talking pure skill, Izzy should beat this comfortably. Like, if you're telling me who's more skilled, Israel Adesanya or Joe Pyfer, I'm picking Israel Adesanya 100 times out of 100 times, But with Izzy slowing down with age, the mileage, the wear and tear on his body, I think he'll win, but I think it'll be like a 48-47 decision, I think Pyfer could steal a couple rounds just by being more active, maybe shooting and getting a takedown. Though I do think Izzy could get up relatively quickly from any takedown that's landed on him. And, I think Izzy can and should and will outpoint Pyfer here, on some Izzy versus Vittori, prime point fighting Izzy type of thing. I think he can flick the leg kick, pop the jab, frustrate Pyfer. Pyfer still, I don't want to say he's green, because he's already lost to Jack Hermanson, and that should be like, your wake up moment or your fraud trick or whatever. So I don't want to say he's green, but I do think he could get easily frustrated by Izzy, and he could overextend and walk into a counter or something. But I am worried about this pick for one reason and one reason only, and that's Pyfer's power. Pyfer does have some pretty heavy hands, and he will put you out if he lands on you clean a few times. Also, he's a physically strong dude. He's a pretty strong guy. So I think if Izzy really is done, if the body can't do what the mind wants anymore, I could see Pyfer catching Izzy, maybe with a big right hand or something, kind of like how Evloev did. But I also think that Evloev is a much better striker than Pyfer. And I think Izzy was winning that fight, or at least he won that first round before he got eye poked, But it is what it is. Even though Izzy's a bit slower, even though I think there is a possibility that Pyfer catches him, I do think Izzy has enough left in the tank to win this. So, final prediction, I'm going to go Izzy by a 48-47 decision. Maybe 49-46. Maybe Pyfer's gas tank fails him in the 5-rounder, but I think 48-47 is pretty realistic. Now, for what would be next for Izzy, I'm not too sure what you could do next. He's clearly done competing for belts. That's been pretty obvious for about a year and a half now. But I don't think anybody wants to see him waste his final fights on other top 15 upcoming prospects. I think that'd be kind of a disrespectful way for Izzy to go out after such a great career. I do think you could do like Izzy versus Fluffy, since Fluffy isn't going to get a title shot after the Strickland loss. He's still pretty high ranked. It makes sense. I think that could sell pretty well. And it'd be a pretty competitive fight. I know that Izzy wanted to run back the Strickland rematch, but I mean everything is pointing to Strickland versus Hamzat for the title. So I don't think that will happen. And he can't fight up because he's lost to everybody ranked above him. He lost to Dricus, lost to Evloev, lost to Strickland. Maybe you could do Izzy versus Kyle, since Kyle, lost to Evloev and he's coming off the RDR win, but he'll need one more to get a title shot. And I think Izzy would beat Fluffy. I want to say he'd beat Kyle. I don't think Kyle looked too great against RDR. He was getting caught by some awkward punches. But I don't know, maybe Kyle could catch him, So, final prediction, I'm going Izzy by 48-47 decision, maybe 49-46, with maybe Fluffy or Kyle if he gets past this one. And so, finally, all roads lead to Moicano versus Duncan at the Apex, This is a badass fight, kid. How could you not be ready for Moicano versus Duncan at the Apex? So, this is the final fight before 327. We're going to get Moicano versus Duncan. I mean, how could you not want this as a main event? You know what I'm saying? How could you not want a bottom 10 lightweight versus a non-ranked lightweight as a main event for your Saturday night, huh? So, number 11th ranked, former title challenger, Money Moicano, the man who dropped Islam Makhachev, we all saw it. We all saw the right hand, the crazy power, the counters. This guy on another level, And he's going up against the unranked 32-year-old prospect, the demon himself, Chris Duncan, who might be the only guy with a more meathead style than BSD that I've ever seen, at least at lightweight. Maybe Yuri gives them a run for their money, but Duncan is a true marauder, a dying breed, if you will. But initial thoughts, I was leaning towards Moicano, but I went back into the room. I watched some film, high level research, of course. Breaking down the numbers, looking at specifics, like the great Volk would say. And I'm gonna go with Chris Duncan to beat Moicano. Now this could come back and backfire, blow up in my face. Maybe Moicano just does this guy like BSD, just takes him down, brutalizes him on the ground, fucking 10-8s him every round or something. But I like Duncan's pure grit to win this fight. I think Moicano was 36, coming off back-to-back losses. I mean, he didn't take crazy damage in either, but still, you're raging, you're losing. It's not a good sign. I don't think he really has the power to stop a meathead. He stopped BSD, but that's because he took him down and just kind of mogged him on the ground. But I think if Chris Duncan just throws everything to the wind, starts blitzing Moicano, I don't really think Moicano can stop him in his tracks, or at least hit him hard enough to make him respect Moicano's power like that. Duncan will walk forward even if he's wobbled, even if he's bleeding. And Duncan also has some pretty solid grappling. He won 3 out of his last 4 via submission. I think, in my opinion, he's physically stronger than Moicano, has more power than Moicano. I think Duncan kind of just marauders through Moicano, if I'm being honest. I think he'll pressure. I think he'll throw bombs at Moicano. And I don't think Moicano is like the grittiest guy or has the most hard or is the most durable. I mean, nothing against Moicano, right? But I just don't think he can really withstand a barrage like that, if he's getting hit. If Duncan comes out there heavy, pure pressure, maybe catches Moicano or something, maybe gets a takedown of his own. Who knows? This guy, solid wrestling. I think he can break down Moicano. I don't think Moicano really is the type of guy who can pull it out of the fire per se. I think if Moicano feels like he's losing, I don't think he'll do much, or not that he'll do much to change that, but I think at some point he kind of breaks down, And but like I said, maybe Moicano pulls out the crafty vet. Moicano is a true crafty vet. Maybe Duncan shoots a takedown, puts himself in a bad position, gets caught in a submission. I mean, that could totally happen. Maybe he shoots a takedown, gets reversed. Maybe Moicano times a takedown and just beats on him. I think there's definitely an argument and the path to victory for Moicano. But I'm going to rock with Duncan. 48-47, maybe a late TKO. I think a late TKO is honestly pretty realistic. This guy just walks forward. He, no matter what you throw him, he'll walk forward. And I think this is pretty close, to be honest. This is probably the pick this is the pick I'm least confident in. So, it's pretty 50-50. I'm gonna rock with Moicano I'm gonna rock with Duncan because I like the age, I like the pressure, I don't know, I just feel like he can break down Moicano. Maybe Moicano just survives the early onslaught, takes Duncan into deep waters in the 4th and the 5th. Could definitely happen. But at the risk of looking stupid, I'm gonna go with Duncan. He should be around the 11th, 10th if he wins. I think maybe he could fight like a Gamrot, though I do think Gamrot would control him and beat him pretty easily. I'd say Hooker. I think that would be a great fight, but I'm pretty sure Paddy versus Hooker is what the UFC wants, since they have some beef, and it should be an easier fight for Paddy, and they want to get him back into that win so they can push him up to the title picture and stuff. I was thinking maybe Fiziev. I think that'd be a great fight, but Fiziev is coming off a knockout loss against Rufi, so I guess we'd have to see how and when he comes back. But I think if Duncan wins, Duncan versus Fiziev would be a pretty nice banger, to be honest. So to recap, I have Kevin Vallejos beating Josh Emmett by early to mid-round KO. I'm picking Evloev to beat Murphy dominantly, 49-46, 50-45 maybe, I think Izzy shows that he still got some left in the tank, and he beats Pyfer 48-47, maybe 49-46. And I got Duncan to maraud his way over a win against Moicano. Maybe a late TKO, but we'll see. I'm not too confident in that one. So those were my picks for the next 4 main events up until 327. Let me know if you agree, you disagree, whatever you think. Maybe you think I'm the most casual ever. Maybe you think I'm a genius. Who knows? But if you could like, subscribe, that'd be very appreciated. First ever videos. I'm trying to see if I can grow this channel. Make some happen. I'll upload 327 picks next probably. But thank you for watching. If you watched all the way through, if you agreed, if you disagreed, whatever. Appreciate y'all. See you guys in the next video. Peace.